Guys, this is going to be a quick item overview. So, 9.5 PBE, they've kind of shaken things up a little bit. Anything that is now, or that previously was a multi-unit buff, such as your locket and so on and so forth, are now support items, and they've then replaced those items in the normal pool with new ones. So there's going to be kind of a little bit of a learning curve, I think, for a lot of people on these new items, where they fit, where they don't. And so I kind of just wanted to run through things as quickly as I can, give you guys a little bit of an idea on how it all kind of works. So Sterix Gauge is now the belt and the BF sword. It basically is going to be used on anybody that's a frontline AD user. Think Darius from base set 9. Long story short, just kind of increases your damage output when you've taken damage. So you don't really want it on a backliner, in my opinion, because you want it on somebody up front that's going to be able to proc it early enough to get value out of it. So I think realistically for 9.5, you're looking at mostly Darius, Fiora. You can maybe argue Nyla and a couple others, Nasus. But I don't normally put like damage items on Nasus, more tank. But technically speaking, it is a tank item as well, so it's a viable strategy. And then we've got the bow and the belt. So no longer is it going to create a little person on your board when someone dies. You're now going to get Nash's Tooth. It's basically just going to be somebody who has a low mana cost and high attack speed, and wants attack speed, I should say. So Azir is the only one that really comes to mind for good usage. But I think you can kind of argue like any mage you want to give attack speed to cast faster, invoker, so on and so forth. It kind of can work. We've got Crown Guard. Crown Guard is now going to be the locket replacement. I think this is basically best on anybody who utilizes AP on the front line for shielding. So think of your Shen, Taric, things like that. Anybody that has shields, I think this is going to just go best for them. I don't really have many damage dealers I find this to be great on. You can maybe argue in Noxus units for frontline value early. You can maybe say like Swain or, Mord. Maybe if you don't have like an RFC on Mord and you want him to have a little bit more tank, but also have the AP to back it in the same time. So I think Crown will be kind of one that you'll have some like niche setups that make a lot of sense. Otherwise, just kind of a generic throw it down and it will work tank item. So I don't think is bad. I think it makes more sense than Locket in a lot of comps. So I think this is a good change. We've also now got Adaptive Helm. So Adaptive Helm is kind of a very unique setup in my opinion. It's both a frontline and a backline item, which I kind of like. Ketcone was kind of weird in the sense that like you didn't want to put it on a lot of comps. If someone had something like a Jarvan, it would jump and stun the Ketcone users. So it just kind of felt bad. Wasn't super used. Now, Adaptive Helm gives you both AP, mana, and resist, so it can work on a frontliner just by base stats. But if you're in the front two rows, you get 35 armor and magic resist, meaning it goes great on a tank because you just get those extra values. Similar in scope because the AP and mana, it goes really well on shielding tanks just because you're getting that extra AP as well as the mana to give you that first cast faster. Think Protector's Vow in that regard. A little bit less Protector's Vow because it's 45 versus 15, but still valuable. Whereas if it's in the back two rows, you get AP and you gain mana. So it can be one of those situations where if you have a unit that you might want back road in some situations, frontline in others, you can utilize it in that regard. I think the best option for that right now would probably be GP in terms of somebody that you can put frontline and backline, as his stats do change based on if he's in the front two rows or back two rows. But I think the obvious choice is this is now just a great slam if you need another AP item. that you want on like your damage dealing unit, just to get the ability cast off more frequently. You don't have Invoker, etc. Or you just need to slam a tank item on somebody that deals shields or etc. with AP. I think this is a great unit item. I think it's probably one of my favorites of the new items, just because it is so flexible, and I like flexibility when it comes to item slams, which to me is really nice. Night Harvester is a new one as well. Takes away the shroud. I like the idea, right? Night Harvester sounds great in just the raw stats, but I don't like the setup where you have to be below 60 health to deal max damage. It just kind of feels sus to me. I think it will probably be fine, and it might have a lot of use cases. It just feels bad to me. I think your Nylas, etc. of the world will work with this. I think it will also be fine on somebody like Darius or Katarina or Mord. It just kind of feels awkward sometimes. I don't like having more of your damage based off of getting damaged. It just, to me, a lot of times I don't want my carries to take damage. I want my carries to be able to mitigate damage. That's why I usually will throw an RFC on somebody, and so on and so forth. I think it could be a Fjord item. Yeah, I think it'd be a fine Fjord item. I don't think it's bad. It just, again, you don't necessarily want Fjord to be primary tanking, so like you have to kind of hope that she takes enough damage to where she's not dying, but also then in turn getting extra boost. I think Night Harvester combined with like Asterix on like an AD tank damage dealer makes sense, but then you have kind of an awkward situation where you don't have healing and two tank damage items. Then you're like, your third item either has to be healing, or you have to then play around a healing augment, which isn't bad. I just feel like it requires a specific setup and a specific compositional play to make it work. You might be able to get away with better setup. The raw stats are great, but I hate this portion of it, the 60% health portion. So the final item then, getting rid of Zephyr, is Even Shroud. So, long story short, frontline item. You sunder enemies within 2 hexes, as well as you gain you gain armor and magic resist for the first 10 seconds of the fight. So I think it's a good setup to get rid of armor in general. I think it makes sense from a having an ionic point of view, right? Like this is just now the ionic for AD, which I think is fine. You also do get some base stats that are pretty decent in the first 10 seconds of combat, which is generally when your tanks will be alive. I mean, if your tanks are alive past 10 seconds, you're already either really tanky and probably don't need a whole lot of the bonus armor magic resist, or you probably should have built something else. Should probably build more damage at that point. And so I think this is an interesting item. I think it has purpose. It's just, I think it's going to be, again, very AD heavy compositions that want to run this, which makes sense. Now, going into emblems, they've changed 2 emblems. So instead of Demacia, we now have Bilgewater, and instead of Slayer, we now have Vanquisher. I think these are probably good things, as Slayer now has, I think, a better carry potential, with Mordekaiser being in the ranks of Slayers. And I also think with Demacia getting a little bit more of a buff with the changes to make the items consistent rather than RNG dependent every round, I think Bilge makes more sense to give. It's also a new trait, and people would rather play the new traits than some of the older traits, especially for casual players. They want to see the new things, the new shiny things. And I think that makes sense. Vanquisher gives you the ability to basically crit with any ability, which in turn makes Vanquisher emblem on carries good, right? If you have like another Vanquisher in your setup already, like Noxus, for instance, with Darius, already has Vanquisher. So you could throw a Vanquisher, say, on Mordekaiser if you wanted, if to get like that extra Vanquisher value. Say you had Darius 3 already, and you only have 1 item Mord. I think it'd be fine to throw on him, right? Bilgewater basically just scales damage with the cannons as you get more, which means it's a chase trait. You want more Bilgewater to get more cannon value, especially if you want to see, cannons blow people up. So those are, I think, the biggest ones to note for emblems. Obviously, we have new ones throughout here now. Ixtal, Demacia now, Slayer, etc. Those are only grabbable with Earth or Earth adjacent stuff. I won't go through the Radiants because, long story short, they're just going to be stronger versions of the items that you already saw. And so, Sterix just gives you more max health and more AD. Nashers, same thing. Crown, same thing. So if you're really, really curious, check them out. And I think that's kind of something you just got to look at a little bit more. I think Midnight Reaper makes more sense, in my opinion, than Night Harvester. So kind of keep that in mind. Midnight Reaper giving 80% health versus 60. It's a lot easier to hit 80% health with a carry and not die. So I don't hate it. But anyway, one thing now to keep in mind as we go into like artifacts. Artifacts are generally your Ornn items. And so that's kind of what we're looking at here. Shimmer is no longer a thing. And some of the Ornn items that did, area of effect buffing are now dropped down into support, which is another class of item. And we'll get to those here in a bit. So I think Ornn actually got a lot stronger because almost every one of the items now is either going to be a carry item or a good tank item. There's really not a whole lot of junk available. So I think kind of keep that in mind. So we're going to see now Gold Collector, along with Goldmancer, along with Moguls, right? We don't really have anything else that's changed in here other than those. I believe everything else was previously in here. So, just keep in mind that those are now going to be in Ornn rather than in Shimmer, which I think is good. I think it makes Ornn make more sense. Ornn items make more sense because you're getting either a damage carry or a tank item guaranteed every time. And I think that's valuable. And now I think we can go into support here. Support has some new items, and it's an interesting setup, though it's kind of hard to justify sometimes taking them with their current power. I think would be my kind of qualm to them. The current power to them is just not very great. And then because of that, I don't know if it always makes sense to do this. Aegis of Legion, basically anybody behind the unit that has this, it's like a shroud reversed onto your board, gets attack speed and armor, etc. Holder adjacent allies and all allies behind them for 10 seconds. It's good. Just how valuable is that, right? Is it worth a gold augment taken away from you? I'd argue no. Is it worth a gold aug? I'd argue no. It doesn't do that much, and it also then requires me to clump up, which I don't like. Banshee's Veil. Crowd control, basically immunity. I think this might be more worth it, but again, is it worth a gold item? Gold augment. Then Crest of Cinders. At the beginning, holder and all allies within one hex of the same row gain Crest of Cinders. Empower their attacks and burn the target for 8% of their max health and true damage and apply wound. This makes sense, I think, if you have like a triple carry setup, that one of which can have one less item. But then in turn, why not just make something that, why not just make a an Aegis, right? To me, it seems worthless to devote an entire augment to that. And there's other augs like Red Buff that do a similar thing. And so on and so forth. So I'll let you guys kind of roll through these. Needlessly Big Gem is now a support. Chalice, Locket are now support. Obsidian Cleaver, which I always kind of thought was a support item, is now more of a support Ornn item, is now into support. Same thing with Randuin's. Shroud, Zeke's, Zephyr, and ZZ Rot are now also support. So this is where those extra items went. I think the problem for me with support is they're going to have to make them a lot stronger to, in my opinion, justifiably be able to justifiably like pick them. And in my opinion, it just seems like they're not worth it right now. Um, Maybe in the future there's more value to it. Maybe in the future you can make more arguments that these are worth playing. But like currently, I think it's just I don't know if it's worth taking away an augment for this. And that's my problem because you have to utilize an augment to get support. You can't just get it naturally. Yeah, no, 100% Cass. I think it's one of those situations where it's okay, they're fine. Depending on what you get, they can definitely benefit your team, but I think there's better augments that can, kind of take those places instead, which to me is kind of where it becomes a question mark or suspect. So I guess we'll kind of see what happens. We'll see if they start buffing them as we go forward. There are portals I can get everyone support items, but that's about the only time I think I'll ever use them. Fly, because otherwise I just don't feel like they're worth it. And like, don't get me wrong, in a situation in which you're getting them for free, sure, great, I like it. But what is there two portals that have it? If I can recall off the top of my head, and that might be incorrect. Um, I haven't looked and like memorized each of the new portals yet. I've gotten them mostly down, bilge water, etc. A lot of them are pretty memorized at this point, but some of them are a little bit hazy still. But yeah, I don't think they're bad. I just think there are better options. Is generally how I put it. But that's kind of it for items. That's kind of it for the new nuances to everything that is itemization. So I think we'll see kind of what happens. I think Ornn is still going to be really good. I actually think Ornn might be better, and I think a lot of these new items are going to be good in one way, shape, or form. It's just going to take time to figure out how to utilize them, right? Like a lot of the items we've had have been in the game now for forever, and so because of that, it's a lot easier to just like look at it and be like, yeah, I know who that goes on. You know very quickly who is going to be a Sunfire cape holder or who is going to be gargoyles, etc. But you don't always know then necessarily who's going to be an adaptive helm frontliner holder just yet. Well, I guess this one's adaptive helm is easy. Scratch that. Crown guard, yeah, that's one's a little bit more questionable. Nashor's tooth, etc. It's just gonna take time. We'll all get there though. Hopefully this video helps out. Learn what it is that is new, and catch you guys next time. Peace.